But I used to just we'd have a transition segment, then we'd have a half court segment, and, we'd have a press break segment, and then we'd have, segments. And I said, you know what? I don't want segments. I want this to be our literal experience, And it was kind of funny. I loved when I was kind of leaving college, growing up, all the Dark Knight movies. And in Bane, he talks about, when he's talking to Batman, he goes, you just borrowed the darkness. We lived in it. And I was like, hey, that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
We live in transition. You're just borrowing it from us for a little while.
Welcome to the JAMODI Podcast. Today we're joined by the head boys basketball coach at Belton High School, Phil McCaslin. Coach McCaslin is in his 15th year of coaching, 11th as a head coach. He started as an assistant at Pine Tree with stops at Rice Consolidated, Cedar Creek, and China Springs before coming to Belton. In 2020, he led China Springs to the regional semifinals. He's had 6 playoff teams in 11 years. At Belton, the Tigers were area finalists last year. Coach McCaslin currently has a 36-9 record at Belton. He was named the TABC Don Coleman Coach of the Year and the Super Centex Waco Tribune Coach of the Year in 2019-2020. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at JAMODI Podcast. The JAMODI Podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
Hey, Coach.
Coach, what's going on, man?
Hey, not much. Appreciate you.
No, I appreciate you making the time to do this. And, I have the chance to get to talk with you a few times, interact since I've been down here in Waco. And just so you know, the reason for reaching out to you is almost everybody, that I've talked to, that when Belton comes up, they mention you and just the amazing job that you do there. And so when so many people are saying positive things, I just get curious and I want to find out just more about you.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, I take a lot of pride in Central Texas, man. I think we've got good coaches here. And obviously you being up in Dallas, maybe the depth of teams down here is not going to be the same up there. I think we have a lot of good coaches in Waco and in Central Texas. And I think it kind of is one of those rising tides kind of things where, it's made me a lot better just being in this area, just having to go against all those guys. And so, well, how's Midway treating you?
Man, I love it. I'm really enjoying the beginning of the school year. I think the people there are great. The staff overall, and my wife and I both were just talking about that. It's been such an easy start to a school year. And then on the basketball front, the 2 assistant coaches I have are just outstanding, and I've really enjoyed getting to know them. And then the guys, I've seen a lot of great change and growth in them in the past 2 months or so, which it's different, and I love Coach McDade and so thankful to get to, take over a program that he cared about so much, but just anytime there's change, people can handle that in different ways. And I've been so pleased with how they've handled it and been accepting. And I think we're having a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, it's, I was talking, we've got a new baseball coach and, I've only been here a year at Belton and, Coach Fawcett did an awesome job here before, but when you're in year 1, every word out of your mouth is brand new. Every drill is brand new. Every single thing is brand new. It's, and so it's so just being in year 2. Just how do we stand when we talk to each other? Where and how do we move? You can get into stuff so much fast. I know you're dealing with that right now. Just the amount you teach at this time of year, just so you can actually start doing basketball is sometimes it's overwhelming.
It's a really good point. And I think I was excited about the challenge to start fresh, but I underestimated how different it is from, 12 years of the same language and people just understanding culture and even, like you said, drills and terminology. I found myself early on wanting to go faster, but then realizing, man, I can't, and we can't. And if I did try to push the speed, then frustration came out in them, but also in myself. And so I think it's probably one of the most fun exercises I've done in a long time by starting over, because I think it's made me better I've had to grow and change some expectations, but then at the same time, every day, kind of like you said, every day it's so brand new that we're always having a good time figuring it out. But it has been different for sure.
Yeah. You talk about making you better. One of the things I ran into last year is I really had to look at drills that I've done for so long and say, all right, how valuable, I was at China Spring for 5 years. And so by this time, I felt like we would have these things in and stuff. And I would have to look at it and say, hey, I'll get to that in April.
Yeah.
That may not
Yeah.
even be something we touch. And so it really made me analyze my whole bank and just thin it down because you just run out of time. And, just like you, I didn't have a spring at Belton. I got the job late, just like you, and so when you don't even have a few weeks of April, May, and I mean, I didn't even have really a June here. I know you kind of had at least a June, but it's still, when you're just in that fall and you got to squeeze it in, it makes you very time economical.
Yeah. Yeah. And really just trying to meet them where they are. And I know that's kind of a cliche phrase, but not just try to take Grapevine Faith Christian School and rinse it and repeat, and take some of maybe the good things, but then also what does this group need even more? And so we have been focusing on more of just not what you do, but how you do what you do. Like you kind of mentioned, I laughed a little bit like how we stand. That's been a really good conversation that we've had the last 2 months is how we stand. What do we do with the basketball? Where do our eyes go? How do we transition from drill to drill? What does excellence look like in open gym? This is we start at 6 a.m. This is your time for an hour before weights. And then, and after I kind of saw after a month of that okay, some of them have a pretty good plan of what to do on their own. Others, they just don't. They're there, which I celebrate them for that. But now, okay, so it's trying to use that word now more like, hey, that's great what we just did. Now, what's the next level?
Yeah.
What can you do? Instead of, hey, I'm so glad you guys are here, but you're not really using your time wisely. That but and that now, I mean, that's a huge shift. And I've been trying to use that word a lot.
Yes, no doubt. I empathize. And, it's not like year 2, you got it all figured out. Heck, you never have it.
That's
all
what I was going to
figured out.
ask you. What is some of the differences between what you felt in year 1 and year 2?
I think one of the biggest things is I tried in year 1 sometimes at this time, I kind of overreacted I'd come home and say, hey, the sky is falling. We can't do anything yet. And, and I wouldn't overact in front of them. I was always positive, but I'd come home and tell my wife and be like, just, hey, look, it's not going to look what you think it's going to look like, and so I think now, even when you have bad days, you've built enough that, hey, they know how to play the way you expect them to play. And look, part of that obviously comes from having some success. When you have a little bit of success, it gives you a little confidence that we can get to that level if we do the things, in year 1, you don't know what level, you don't know if you're going to be able to get to that level. And so, I think it's made it easier. I don't have to spend as much time building those relationships so much, and obviously you got to continue to do that, but it hasn't been I don't know this kid very well. I know his name and I know
That's right.
a little bit of his game, but I don't know much about him.
Yeah.
And now instead it makes it easier to hold them to the right standard or the, standard of excellence. I think the biggest difference, I put this on there and maybe this is good. I have a lot more confidence in year 2 than year 1. Year 1, you don't know if it really looks good or not. You think it does. You hope you want to fall back on your experience of what does look right and what doesn't, but you kind of don't know until it starts. The bodies are flying and things are going. And now in year 2, I can look back and when I watch old tape and then I compare it to practice tape and I can look and say, all right, this actually looks better than that game. Or, hey, this wasn't looking the same as what it looked like. And so, I don't know. I think confidence is the biggest thing. I just have a little bit more confidence that we can get to a correct place, even if we're not great in our rotations right now. And I don't love our weak side box outs. I'm not as just, strained is probably the right word. I don't know if you feel that way or.
No, for sure. And that's where Coach Bloomstrom and Coach Williams, I think, have helped me a ton. Because after the end of every workout or day, we just take 5 or 10 minutes and I ask them, what did you guys see today? Like, what were your thoughts? Because there's days where I really feel like I see click moments in them that
Mhm.
like, you know what? Like I feel like I'm still searching for familiar. And there's moments
Mhm.
when I see that's familiar. The way that we attacked the double gap, made the ball work, and it continued to move until we found like I've seen that before, you know?
Mhm.
And so but I've really it's been really helpful hearing their perspective on and so kind of the idea of are we moving in the right direction? Are we stuck in something? Or are we moving in the wrong direction? And kind of their perspective has been so huge where for 12 years at Faith, I appreciate every part-time assistant I ever had, but no one was ever full-time with me. So having those guys in there, I feel like, I mean, that iron sharpening each other, that's huge. And so that's a difference. And then, you know, I underestimated too the rhythms of different places. I was so used to my same rhythm every day. These days feel like a sprint, coach. Like we start and
Mhm.
it's like boom, day's over. And I just lean back like, what just happened? You know, and it's so the rhythms to the day, the way that just the school day runs, I'm actually back in the classroom, which it's fun teaching speech communications. I used to do that, but I'm going from study halls where I didn't even know
Yeah.
if they were in the room or not.
Sure.
Are you
Yeah.
guys breathing? I'm not sure. I'm just working back here.
Yeah.
And but then also trying to be okay with your confidence point is right on the money. I want them to see and understand the why behind what we're doing. But early
Mhm.
on, maybe they won't get it and maybe they don't. And it's going to take time. That's just another rhythm of the change that I don't know if maybe I was naive to think that, oh yeah, everybody will instantly love all the time we're putting in, all of the standards that are at the end of the day are good and will help them to be the best version of themselves. But and my wife does a great job of this. And I have to remind myself of my senior year in college where I played for one coach for 3 years and it was very much a military style, no fun, not a lot of care, no high fives and smiles. And Coach Drew came in my senior year and it was completely the opposite. I didn't like it. And now, I mean, I love him. And now I actually try to be like him way more than any other coach. So again, and this isn't to sound like, man, there's a mutiny going on. I would say on any given day, the majority of the guys are having a good time, feeling like they're getting better. But you can see and feel the holding back. And so I'm
Mhm.
excited for when that just melts away and we're all just kind of being ourselves, but it takes time.
Yeah. No doubt. And I I had this conversation. People asked, "What do you think helped you the most in year one?" And I said, "Well, I said a lot of things help, but I'll be honest, starting 11-0 really helps." And I know you can't
So just do that. That's all you're
just
saying?
do
Yeah.
that. Just because after that, we won the Lorena tournament, and they thought I invented basketball, and and you
Yeah.
just and I mean I know that sounds so cliche, and it's how you respond when you're not doing that. How do you still create buy-in? And we've all been on the other ends, but sometimes winning does just make things easier, and so
Yeah. Well,
even just
Kenny Bourne said that. He said, because we
yeah,
were talking about, I mean, he had those great years at Flower Mound Marcus with Danny
hmm
Henderson. And a few years after, we're doing with his hoop talk, and he was talking about buy-in and how, culture and toughness and defense. He talked about it starting in the weight room. And I was like, well, coach, you're talking about this buy-in. Like, how do you get that? He's like, well, the number one way is winning. Number one way. And you're right. It'd be great if that's how it works out. I do know this though about the style of play, more of a conceptual offense and playing with pace.
mm,
If you're not used to that, man, it can really look ugly at the beginning. And
oh yeah,
I'm okay with that. Wanting them to be okay with it. And I always tell parents every year at the parent meeting, at the beginning of the season, and turnover percentage super high, shooting percentage super low every year. And just to kind of gear them up for that. But then it flips. And I know it
for
will,
sure.
but good
Yep.
point.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So that's, you talk about conceptual offense and things like that. That's something that we tried to, when I was at China Spring, we had years and we were circle motion. It was slash, curl, lift, and we grinded the clock and I mean, repeat. And I mean, I had kids that graduated, they probably still sleep saying slash, curl, lift, and, I mean, yeah, exactly. Here, we've got more guys that I feel confident with the ball in their hands, and so but transforming into that and trying to play like that and playing with elite pace, and we call it living in transition. We wanna live in
Yeah,
transition and make other people visit,
I like that.
and so that's kind of something that we try to talk about. But man, there's days somebody's standing with the ball and I'm just like, hey, we're in neutral and we've been in neutral for about 6 pounds. Somebody needs to go create an action or so we get a trigger and create an advantage. We don't need 6 pounds. You should have recognized neutral on the first one and go. I mean, so
No,
it's the
that's a
same
great
thing.
point. Yeah, and then like I've seen those moments, and when we watch kind of the Gasso film, we call it flow. Whenever leather touches our fingertips, we're flowing, and it's not an
Mhm.
offense; it's a way to play offense, right? And so that because they kind of want to, hey, should we run flow? Well, I thought we were doing that. Like I thought we were. Do we have the ball? Yeah, we're flowing. It's but
Yep.
I'm not coaching them. My son was actually coaching them, and so we're watching some film, and I see moments of flow, but then just the old habits of walking it up the floor. So there's like three components to it that I'm okay. Legs, like we have to build legs to be able to do this, and
Mhm.
that takes time. And even as much as we do some side to sideline sprints right now, nothing will prepare us like practice and games will. And
For
so
sure.
being patient there. And then uh, I like a 5 out where anybody can bring it up the floor, anybody can attack a double gap. And then until we kind of figure out like they don't want to or they're not confident in, and they kind of figure that out themselves a bunch because the game teaches the game. But wanting everybody to do that, then realizing, okay, there's a skill component that I over or underestimated that, because ball handling to me is just something that we start every workout with for years, forever. And then so getting everybody with a ball in their hand and doing those things, like all of those, and then to your point, to the mentality of shoot it, move it, drive it. Like you put all of those things that have to work together to flow the right way. Heck yeah, it's going to take time. And
Mhm.
and that's where that I brought that word patience, and I think you mentioned it, or that's what you're talking about is installing something new. Man, be patient and celebrate the try. And like Matt Garnett says, just embrace the beautiful struggle because that's what we're in right now. And
For
it
sure.
may come to fruition. 11-0 sounds awesome, but we're building definitely something for the future because our freshmen in eighth period, they're eating it up. It's
Yeah.
ugly, but you think about what in 3 or 4 years, what could it look like?
For sure. And I mean, you nailed it on the head, but it's, you guys sounds like obviously play very similar to how we want to try to play. And when they do it right, it's so fun. It's
Yeah,
so
it's
fun to
beautiful.
watch.
Yeah.
It's so fun to play in. And, you remember as a player, just when the ball popped and you hit a corner three or, somebody just cut and the defense was just gone. And it just, I don't know, it created that feeling that made you kind of fall in love with the game. I always loved the phrase that Blackburn, he taught me this when I went up to go visit with him a few years ago. He always talks about making the defense an accordion and, making it kind of stretch in and out and
Yeah.
move. So the kids always laugh at me because I always do my little accordion hands. So
You
we had
know for a fact that in the locker room, they're mimicking you for sure. They're
yeah,
doing
for
that, and
sure.
there's probably some videos out there of, yeah.
Yeah. They, I had to, well, the funniest thing is I think I called it an accordion for about 6 months and I had a
Yeah.
junior ask me what an accordion was. And I
Well, it's
was
right
like,
next to your VHS tapes and
yeah,
your
exactly.
portable CD player, yeah. Control. You talked about at China Springs, the type of continuity that you're running, which is it's a pattern and it is just
Mhm.
repeat and not that there's not reads out of that and they can't use their brains, but man, just
Sure.
keep doing that thing until a defender makes a mistake somewhere. And turning over though to more of a conceptual offense where you lose a lot of control as a coach. How did you make that change? How's that been for you?
That was it was kind of something that really emerged with when I went up to visit Blackburn and we were circle motion for years and I had some good posts coming. And I was like, and I'd won He's a great kid, and he was our center on the football team, being at a smaller school, and he was about 330, but he had great hands and feet, but you can imagine him running circle motion.
Oh,
He
yeah.
had about one curl and one exit, and he needed
And
to
then sub.
he was sub, but I wanted to use him, so we kinda went to some 4 out and some push-pull and, drive right and move right and all that, and the thing, though, was I felt like if we couldn't get an advantage by our first man, we felt stagnant. And because just in some of the old Memphis stuff and some of that 4 out, if you don't have a guy that can quite deck it and get by, your kids get stuck. And you kind of, and I didn't really know the book, or I didn't really know a good way to explain that or counter it. And so I read a book, and it's super controversial, but it's called, I'm sure you've heard of, Transforming Basketball. And they've got a really popular X, and it's parts of it I'm not a huge fan because they kind of have an attack mentality towards some older ways of coaching. But I loved it. Was a way that made me look at what is a skill, what is a fundamental, and like what actually is that? How do we define that? And then how do kids learn? How does Kyrie finish like that? Does he practice over a cone? Does he practice with body? What's the percentage of difference? When did he transition from inside foot, same leg, same hand layup to, okay, opposite now? I'm going to go off the inside hand. What level of mastery did he have to have before that? And so
Yeah.
then it made me really look at, and so I said, well, what if we just kind of, and I love the phrase they use is neutral and dominoes, recognizing, and we all use those words now. They've kind of become buzzwords, but we try to talk about really recognizing neutral as fast as we can, and then triggering into an advantage, trigger an action to then give us the advantage, then playing when we have the advantage, playing out of dominoes. But it's kind of funny how it originated. I'm probably going to text that kid and say, hey, you made me rethink basketball, because I mean, we were circle motion. I had the Poolville version. I had the Kennedale version. We had the screener set. We ran it. We would try to win 42-40 and shrink it down. And sometimes, they liked playing like that. And sometimes you could tell they didn't. And I loved circle motion for years, but I said,
But for
well,
this
what if
podcast, Coach, I'm so thankful that we're not talking about that. I'm so thankful that, because I'm really on board with what you're doing now. And yeah.
And I tell you the other thing that, go ahead.
Yeah. No, well, I was just going to say, you're right. I mean, I started with Wes Watson at McKinney High School. We realized we were running some really good Bobby Knight motion, and he would sub me in. This is back when I was young and I could still do some stuff. And he would say, hey, Matt, like jump in and kind of check. And I'd tell him, like, Coach, man, I'm seeing so much stuff here. This is so good. And then, but our players, like, they weren't reading or reacting. Like, what's the problem with the read and react offense? Well, if you don't read and react at all. And so we kind of felt like that. And then I got that packet of 2 game of Calipari's Memphis, dribbled. And that opened my eyes to, okay, I really like this terminology. I like how the floor is spaced with the 2 guys high. And, I've always been a centered guy, center the ball, but I love what that looks like. The driving alleys and then the ability to shoot threes. That's the kind of team we had. And man, they really grabbed it. We had a lot of success with it. And then going to Faith, it was 4 out, 1 in, until I realized I don't like where the dunker spot guy, him standing there all the time, and what his defender does. And I just Googled randomly, is there a 5 out dribble drive? Who does that really well? And then I luckily found Mark Cassio, which it's all Doug Novak stuff, but it's, it's moving the floor like this. And so then you have your stretch. But you're right, in dribble drive especially, but even in flow, that neutral, you're blessed if you have the guy that one-on-one with no advantage can, boom, create it. So shifty, so creative, so smart. Not many teams, I think, have that. So them recognizing neutral and having an action that they can create an advantage out of, huge. But that's kind of the funny thing, is like how we started this conversation is, I think this time of year, I would be working on those things. But we're just I don't want anybody that hears this from Midway to say, we're not behind. We're right where we should be, based on that they haven't done this stuff before. But getting to neutral and then creating. I think I'm more right now of you nailed it. Like we need to live in transition because we've got fast enough guys and good enough players that
Mhm.
with momentum and against a disorganized defense, man, we can find some gold. We haven't even talked about neutral yet and what that looks like.
I think that's the biggest thing, and that was, I'm a big NBA guy. I think sometimes the NBA, we get a bad rap. It gets a bad rap because of all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff, and I get it. There's all sorts of things that have nothing to do with the actual basketball, why it probably gets the rap it does. But I was so thankful when the Pacers made the finals and you watched how they played basketball. And it's such exactly how, obviously at a much more elite level and much more elite reads, just because those guys have made hundreds of thousands of more reads than our kids have. And just, if we had our kids for the next decade to make reads and decisions, they could be at least in those same level of reads, just maybe not the same height and skill and strength. And so, watching them play, it was so fun because I was like, oh, look at that creative action. We all love Zoom, but what if you just twist out of Zoom? Or what if you just completely just fake Zoom and come off of a get? Or what if you just slip out of Zoom and go to the weak side stagger and you come off and you watch them play out of it? And it was, and obviously OKC was so phenomenal in defense and all that, but you watch OKC and so much was just, hey, we have a
Field
couple of
switching, all
elite.
that. Golly. Yeah.
Yeah. We're just going to, we're going to get you on a ball screen eventually that you have to switch and we're going to kill it. And there's nothing wrong with that. At China Spring, my first year there, we went to the regional tournament. We had an all-state guard. He played 4 years at American. He just signed a contract in Europe. And we called it all the time, get out of his way. And so there was a lot of times that I can't tell you how many games we had we had to come back in. And I still had 2 timeouts and tied with 8 seconds. And he had the ball. And I kept my mouth shut. And he drove in and made a layup. And I just did this. And so
Looks so smart. And great coaching. Great coaching.
Yeah. I mean, and so OKC, kind of the same thing. But when you watch the Pacers, just the amount of reads that those guys could do. And it was it was kind of a breath of fresh air. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only defender of the NBA sometimes. And I'm like, watch that.
I'm right along with you. I'll watch an NBA game over a college game any day. And a lot of people get upset with that. I think not only are they the greatest players in the world, that's obvious, but they are the best at playing the game the way I think you and I really enjoy it and see it. It started with me really with the Spurs, kind of this journey, the Spurs and their positionless style of basketball and the way like a Boris Diaw could run an offense at that size, the way they moved it. You can even go back to the 85, 86 Celtics, right? There's a great video out there called The Beautiful Game that I show my guys once a year of that team.
Yeah.
And it's just about them moving it. But then there's also one about the Spurs and the trio. And it's like same idea. And then you go to the Warriors, which, man, I think opened us up to a whole other idea of spacing, of shooting fast with courage, and then using a guy like Draymond Green as kind of your point guard. But what I loved watching the Pacers, and I thought what they did the best job of is looking for the advantage that typically teams at the end of the shot clock like resort to. They just started that way. So like I wrote down they played with pace, obviously, and they had amazing spacing, but they would just continue to probe and get deeper into the paint and keep their dribble alive, and guys would keep moving. And it was like, why don't more teams do that? It's because we love our plays. We love our sets. We love to have control. And Rick Carlisle, like incredible. I think they were probably one of the most fun teams to watch that I can think of. But you're right. What a great example for us.
What's so fun about Rick Carlisle is talk about confidence, how he coached in 2011. There wasn't a lot of pace. Kid and Terry and Dirk, they're not sprinting out, but his ability to evolve, and just like us, when, I've had success, not success, but, I used to have the reins tightened and even just a few weeks ago, we tried to put in some chin stuff just to kind of, get the flair. And I was like, I don't like that guy clogging the driving lanes. And so we kind of moved it out, and it just, I always laugh at sometimes when I look back at what I was doing 5 or even 10 years ago, and I go, "What were we running? Like, what was I trying to accomplish? If we could just do
Yeah.
what we did now, that team, that guard could have done this. I could have put that kid would have been great in this action." And, and oh my, like, how did I not run this action with these groups of kids? And you don't want to feel like you're failing previous groups. It's more that you're trying to do right by the next ones. You did as best you could then is what you knew, just and how the game was played and the resources and what we kind of, and it's not like we're reinventing things. It's just,
But we're learning.
it's,
We continue to learn.
yeah,
We continue to have conversations like this. We continue to Google what's a way to do what I love, but in a different way.
for
And then all of a sudden it opens your mind to, golly, there are people out there that have a style of play that just rings so true to my heart, but I just don't know about it. Like I don't understand it
sure.
all yet. And, kind of going back to a little bit of starting fresh and starting over, I think what it does, and you nailed it, what drills don't work, what don't I need to do, where's the fluff? But I think it's what every coach needs to do is simplify. To make reads simple, make offense simple. And Antoine Willis is one of our seniors. He's a phenomenal young man, super
Mhm.
smart, really skilled. But I saw that light bulb moment when I asked him, "Hey, how are you feeling right now in flow?" And he just said, "It's really simple for me. I know exactly when to attack and when not to, and when to shoot and when." I was like, "Yes, that's it." So like if we're starting to have those light bulb moments, it's the clarity I feel like that allows players to get to another level and play in a courageous way. What stops clarity, what clouds things up, us adding more, us changing things, us just trying to get more complicated when, man, simplicity sometimes is sophistication. And I'm just trying to tell myself that, coach, right now as I'm thinking of
Taylor.
what about like the actions I want to get in? No, no, no. Keep it simple. Find a double
Mhm.
gap. If you don't like it, move it so that guy can find a double gap. If he doesn't like it, move it. And then once you get in there, either stride, stop, finish, kick, or Brunson. Let's just keep it
Yep.
that simple and play off of that.
And that's, I think sometimes you kind of nailed it. You get so wrapped up. I'm a set guy. I love at the end of the year, my call sheet just it grows and grows and grows and you get to things that and then you want to put in counters of things that you've been have success with. And then all right, how many counters of that? How many different reads of that? And blobs. I mean, there's nothing more fun than a great blob and a screen to screener and you knock down a three or something. But when I was so proud. We were at a fall league game, and we've been running our blobs that we've had in for years. And one of our kids, it's out of a box alignment, and we'd had a couple fouls. There were some holdings we're trying to get, and one of our seniors, Noah Childers, is on the backside elbow. His man's just not looking at him. He just cuts to the rim, and we pass him the ball. We lay it up, and it's just kids being confident to do things like that, and not being, like you said, kind of shackled to run this and run it a certain way. And yeah, there's set plays you got to sometimes create. You're going to go against we're all going to go against schemes, and we want to run something that we know will take advantage. But that's why I just think, and that's like we mentioned with the Pacers and the Spurs, I still think transition might be the most underrated part of our game. Just, I don't know if we talk enough about the importance of getting it out, being your own outlet, getting it out of the net. And one of the things that I believe is if you can live and be elite in transition takes care of so many things that we've spent so much time coaching. Our press break, all right? What do we do against odd front 3/4 court? Well, if we're down the floor, it doesn't exist. Let's shrink the possessions we got to break that against, and it doesn't mean we have to fly down and launch, but if we can get down. One of my favorite phrases is there's only bad things that happen to the offense in the backcourt. Nothing good has ever happened in the backcourt for the
Yeah.
offense
Yeah.
in the history of basketball. So we want to get
But
out of that area.
that arc to arc space, right? Between the two
Yes.
threes. Golly, how fast can we just get through that space? Because
Yes. Yes.
nothing's happening back here, and all the good stuff is over here, and all that's in our way is that
Yes.
court and that space. That's why I think passing it across half court is such a great standard to have. Like our goal is to pass it or up it across half court
Yes.
way more than we dribble across. And there's a great game for that. It's called 5 seconds to the paint. It's a PGC game where as soon as the team that's like on, or no, you can play either way. team gets it, they have 5 seconds for that ball to be inside. Probably the three-point line is a better way, but inside the three-point line or to touch the paint, 5 seconds, but it can't be dribbled across half court. And so early on, man, they are flinging it, throwing it. There's just so many turnovers, and we're celebrating it. We're so excited, and they're looking at us like why aren't we getting yelled at? Because you're trying, like you're trying to play with pace. And then we get to talk about how do we swoop? Like how do we run? Are we wide? Are we skinny? And then defense tries to cheat it, and then you have to find another way. But right on the money with the arc to arc time. So many. I agree. Like transition is where we want to live. I think players automatically think of transition as off of a steal or a rebound, but it's not just live ball. Like it's off of makes too. We can live in transition. It's all about how fast we fly and how quickly that ball moves. And because you and I have both seen after a free throw, you can still play with pace and get a wide open three pretty fast because teams in transition are typically slower. And the last thing is 5-on-5 is incredibly hard. You're a good defensive coach. 5-on-5 against you is going to be tough. I'm a bad defensive now, but I think 5-on-5 is not where we want to spend the most of our time, but 5-on-4, 5-on-3, 4-on-3, let's live there.
It's funny you say that because we were working with our freshmen the other day and we were talking about neutral and things like that. And I said, hey, you're going to get lost. And if you want to know what you could do when you just get confused, come stand next to me and we'll play 4-on-4. And guess what? Our chances of scoring will go up. And if one of your friends doesn't know what to do, he can come stand with you and we'll play 3-on-3 and our chances of scoring will just go way up and it's just teaching them that because there's more space, so closeouts are longer. And it's a joking thing, but it's just the more we can maximize space. And that's why one of the biggest things the guys know that drives me nuts on the other end of the side or the other side of the floor is if just because your man's jogging on offense, you got to help. We want to then change the numbers even more because if they play 4-on-5, the chances of scoring, even for an extra pass, not the whole possession.
Let's overload the box when they're lazy or their spacing is bad. Let's not help them.
Yes. Oh, that's one of my biggest pet peeves is, well, my man's back here. And I'm just, those things make me cringe. But, and they know they'll look at me in fall games or summer games and they'll start running because they know they're doing it. And, but I think one of the things I've loved that this is the first year I did it is we just tagged every drill, we have a transition drill that goes the other way. And it's been hard for me in some ways, unless we're using full court. But if we're doing just a 4-out shell, sometimes, we secure the bound, we outlet it to the coach, and those 4 guys are sprinting into a 3. And we just have 4 guys passing into it, and then we're sprinting into it. Or, if we play 3-on-3 shell and we're working on one pass away, how we have our hand and gap. All right, 3-on-3 shell, we play it, and then we play 3-on-3 the other way. Yeah. And one of the things is that's what we kind of talked about living in it. I told the guys, we do that every drill, unless it's a full court drill that we're going up and down. We just said, we're going to do that. That way we talk about, this is how we live. This is literally how we practice. And everybody gets in transition, but I used to just we'd have a transition segment, then we'd have a half court segment, and, we'd have a press break segment, and then we'd have, segments. And I said, you know what? I don't want segments. I want this to be our literal experience, and it was kind of funny. I loved when I was kind of leaving college, growing up, all the Dark Knight movies, and in Bane, he talks about, when he's talking to Batman, he goes, you just borrowed the darkness. We lived in it. And I was like, hey, that's what we're going to talk about. Yeah. We live in transition. You're just borrowing it from us for a little while. And so that's kind of how we try to talk about it, is we live in that transition. And obviously, there's times we got to reel back and, it's been 4 one-pass jacks in a row. And it's like, all right, we got to try to get something quality here. But at the same time,
where we might be a little different. It might be a little different. It's just because you just said it, and I'm sorry for cutting you off. You said that let's get more quality. In my opinion, if those 4 jacks are quality, then we're going to keep jacking, and that's where, but it's a little bit of a, there's purists that watch it and go, this just isn't smart. And I understand that completely. I love the Batman Bane comment. I'm going to look that up and definitely borrow that. And, I think one thing really, I love what you're doing with that the transition after whatever drill, especially something like shell, where that's the reward, fellas. Like after you bust it and you work so hard and you get the ball, the reward is go fly, go play.
Yep.
But if we stop it right then, it's like, hey, great job, you did it. Now in a real game, you'll get to go and do that. Why not? Like, why not
Yeah.
do it now? That's a great point.
And that's been new. And now sometimes it's hard because there's a kid that didn't jump to the ball and he doesn't have his butt to the baseline. You want to correct it. And I've been really blessed. We've got a new assistant and he has the other side of the floor. He has the transition side and I have the half court side. And then sometimes he might have the half court side and I have the transition side. But then he does such a great job of, okay, that kid he's still looking at this end and then he kind of gets them as they're coming back. And that's where, and I know not every, I've been at places when I was at Rice Consolidated or even when I was at Cedar Creek one year, it was just me in the gym. And, I know that's always challenging, but I've been really blessed that he's done such a good job of catching that kind of stuff and even catching them on the fly, just saying, hey, we got to get to the mid faster or we're not at the nail yet. And so it just takes it. But I think it's helped our conditioning. It's made it more fun. And then the kids and I got this from the Suns back before. I'm a Suns fan, so I can say this. Back before it was kind of a disaster like it's been. But back when they
7 seconds or less, man, I've got that somewhere. I love that book. Yeah.
And they talk about the first 3 steps. And, when we play 3-on-3, if you can dominate the first 3 steps and just stretch the defense down. So, there's not great one bounce help. We can get by and then we're going to get that accordion and we're going to get a kick.
There it is.
We're going to get that collapse. And so I think that's something, and it's fun. Like you said, the reward, you can tell they have fun with it. And there's days that they just, we do our scramble shell or we do our X out and then we're gone and it's just go. And so it just makes it so much fun. And I'll be honest, we don't have to go as long. It doesn't have to be a 2-hour and 10-minute practice. It can be an hour 40, an hour 35, because the amount that you're doing this.
I'm getting a ton in. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's fun to coach in. It's hard because you give up so much. And trust me, I've got all my hand signals and all that, and I still have them all, but it's so much more fun to just get the bound, one bounce, pitch it, one bounce, kick it, one more bang, and we put it on our playoff shirts last year. We call it sprint, spread, share, splash. And that's kind of, anytime there's a miss or it's just sprint, spread, share, splash. Don't overthink it.
Yeah, keep it simple. And I love that list right there. I think a couple things that you said is I don't see anything wrong with prioritizing fun in our practices because fun, enthusiasm, spirit, it all elevates performance. It takes them to another level, to me, in my opinion, farther than fear or do this or else. Think if but I'm the same way. I don't get jazzed up to go into a staff meeting. I'm sorry. I just don't. That's, but if they're telling me, hey, we're going to do something fun in it. All right. I might check it out. So I think prioritizing fun is really good. And I asked this question in the speed round that if this was your last year of coaching, what would you do more of? And majority of guys spend more time in relationships and have more fun. Like these are coaches talking. And so I think I need to hear that where there's times where I wonder, are we having too much fun? Like, is this not serious enough? And then, man, I see the joy on their face. I'm like, no, right where we need to be. But also listening to other coaches that have done it way longer and been way more successful, they would prioritize that more. So that's one thing that I really love about what you said. My second is a question. You were at China Springs and with that other style, winning in the 40s, the moment that you increase possessions and your speed, well, it's the other team is going to start scoring more. And so you're
Mhm.
not going to have that same defensive feel or look or, keeping teams under a certain thing. Have you been okay with that, with giving up control of that as like you have the offensive side?
Yeah, that's been a big challenge because, at China Spring, we had teams that I thought took a lot of pride in some really sound defensive fundamentals. We jumped to the ball. We took a lot of charges. We boxed out. We were strong, and we would push it some. I had one year we led the state in threes in China Spring one year, and so we did shoot it
Awesome.
some. But
Yeah.
but we also had some years that was hunker down and build the wall, and you get the bound, get slash curl lift going. And then,
There it is again. There it
yeah.
is.
So I think the thing that we try to talk about is, you mentioned this, we try to use the same similar. I bet there's a lot of the same words. We talk about gold shots, everything we want to talk about is not so much total points. We really try to emphasize on some limiting gold shots, being the
Yeah.
second to jump at the rim, no offensive rebounds, and then dominating the turnover margin. It's really our pillars of play, but we talk about we're going to play faster. We're going to shoot it better and more. We're going to play with pressure. We're going to dominate turnovers, and we're going to dominate details. And that's kind of what we try to say, how we're going to play, not necessarily how we're going to interact and react, but how we're going to play. And so, I've kind of gotten away from maybe a total points or total turnovers. If we have 14 turnovers but force 24, we're dominating the turnover margin.
Yeah.
If they get 7 offensive rebounds but we get 16, we're dominating that possession gap. And so, if we score 75 and they score 60, that's still a pretty big margin. So it's really been about, are we dominating our pillars of play? And it hasn't been easy. Trust me. There's been times, we don't rotate quite as hunkered down as I'd like, or we switch an off ball action that I was like, how do we not just jump, shoot the gap, meet the pass? It's fundamental. Let's, and you should be arrive with a high hand. And sometimes they just switch it. I'm like, all right, well,
Transition
okay.
is messy. Transition is
Yeah.
messy and it's fast and play the same stuff that we love on the offensive side. What we can do to defenses, it's hard to see it on the defensive side happen when we know like that. Oh, we love when teams do that. Oh crap, we're doing that right now. And yeah, obviously moments and we want to create better and better habits. But I've just seen the more that speed increases, but you mentioned it, like we should be better at it every night that we play because nobody does it in theory, right? No, that's what we tell our teams. Nobody does it every day like we do. So all of these transition games, all of these small advantage, big advantage games or disadvantage games, we're living in that uncertainty and just continuing to have to see a need, fill a need, see a need, fill a need. And we'll be better at that than the people we're playing. But perfection in it will never happen because of how difficult it is. Sometimes those angles, sometimes that offense can surprise you and, oh, I thought it was this and it's not. And now we're having to scramble. And sometimes blind squirrels find a nut, even if you're trying to do the right thing. So I don't know. I just rambled there, but
No, I think one thing that's been underrated that I've found is since we've gone to more conceptual, I feel like my guys, since they read the game better, sometimes it translates to the other side where they see things and reads. We've had a few fall games where they'll kind of see the back of the ball handler kind of go into a zoom and they'll leave and go double right off that handoff. And we create a live ball and those
yeah,
types of things where, I didn't say to go, we're not running a run and jump right now. Why are you trapping? But at the same time, obviously that's a great time to go. They're in the middle of a side dribble handoff, you leaving, we can rotate and play 2-on-3 week and go get the double and let's go. So giving up control, but as long as, like you said, I think if we're playing with those instincts and we're playing with our 5 pillars, where I feel like we're in a great position to go and then create. Because I do think this, we talk about transition. Live ball turnovers have been proven analytically will lead to the highest percentage shots. It's just, and so, when we talk about turnovers, if we have some because we're trying to throw it and it, hits our mom in the stands or hits the chair, we can get to 5-on-5,
for a hat, let's go. Yeah, yeah.
But when you can create live ball, you're going to create shots in the 65, 70, 75 percentile range, which is just, honestly, I've had too many games where we've had way too many live ball turnovers, and it's such a hard one to come back from.
Yeah. You mentioned fall league a couple times, and I wanted to come back to that because this was 2019, 2020, the year before COVID. We were doing this is up in Dallas Fort Worth. We were doing all the fall leagues, spring leagues, summer leagues, and team camp and all this stuff. And I started to have more and more guys that were really big into select ball, and realized, man, I feel like I'm really withdrawing a ton from them. Yeah, I'm encouraging them to play select ball and do those things, but by the way, we got to drive to Denton on Monday and play in this spring league game. And I asked a couple of my players, like, listen, you guys are pretty busy with what you're doing with practice and games. Do we do spring league? Do we do this stuff, or do we take a break from that and you guys just focus, and then when it gets back to the fall, we'll start training and we'll get ready for the school season. Because for those guys, a lot of those select ball guys, they have 2 seasons now. They have school ball and select ball. And we get mad when select ball tramples on us, but we don't think about it at all when we trample on them. And so I took a break from all that. And, it was super freeing for me, because I've tried to think about what are all the things that I still do because either my coach did it or everybody else does it. And maybe it's still good to do, but I want to make sure. And so I went away from that. Well, coming down here, there's a lot of these leagues around, and like they played in a summer league. It was my first time to watch a summer league game in 6 years. And I remembered why I don't really enjoy it watching, because I'm not coaching them. But even more, like they don't even know me then. This was a whole other animal, but we're trying to talk the next day at open gym about how about this spacing? And it's just, but what are your thoughts on fall league and things like that? Why is it good to do? And maybe even in Central Texas, what advantages does it bring?
Well, I think you mentioned, the big thing I found this when I was at China Spring was, Waco's kind of in the middle. And so we had some kids that played quite a bit of select when I was at China. And then we had some kids that they only played during the season. They multi-sport kids, or Waco was kind of in the middle where getting to Austin or getting to Dallas you're not going to be able to go to Dallas, Mansfield twice a week for practice and then a Saturday, Sunday and stay in a hotel. And we had some, and there's some organizations in Waco that do a great job, but there's just not enough to play against. Even if you practice there, you got to go up and play on the weekends. And so that kind of built, my background a little bit with that. And then coming here to Belton, we're kind of in between, we're a little closer to Austin, but we still, and we have more guys just being bigger and things like that do play quite a bit of select and go down. But I still find it value in terms of, gathering information. All we want to do is gather information about our teams this time of year. In the summer and in the fall, the old baseball coach at China Spring, he's a multi-time state champion, Coach Beckham. He told me that because you're always just gathering information. So when it comes time, you can fall back on that whole encyclopedia you've gathered over the last 7 months. And that gives you the confidence to make the correct decision in the biggest moments. And, and I don't write everything down we do at Hot Hoops, or this kid didn't make right decisions, but you're just internalizing. So I think it helps build that bank. But I think it's also a good understanding of when are live periods, when are recruitable periods, when are big tournaments. So the way we've kind of done it is June is kind of our month. July is your month. And the gym's open, and we'll do some ball handling. We'll do some shooting, but I'm going to go to the beach in July. I hope you go on vacation and do something fun.
Yeah.
And then the same thing in the spring. We haven't played in a spring league, so to speak, because there is a lot of time. That's a huge time for select basketball. And so we finish up hopefully as close to March as we can get. And then kind of April and May, or really April for sure, we try to focus on, fundamentals, shooting, weight room, and building our bodies and building relationships and building our skill level. But you need to go play. And then in the same thing in May, we kind of do a little bit. We need to have something if we're going to play in June and play at TABC and those types of things. So I think it's also letting them know, what they need, this is yours. I'm not going to infringe upon that time. These are ours. And yeah, it's a little bit more than it used to be. I think one thing that's helped is fall. There's not a ton of select fall. There's some, but it's not, near of what the spring or what July is. So
Especially not for
fall
high
league,
school kids, it should really fall
yeah.
off.
And so fall, it's just another way we can add to that encyclopedia as a coach where,
Yeah.
so I've always enjoyed it. I think there's a line, and like you mentioned, some team camps, and you probably remember those SQTs.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah. They're still going up in Dallas. I used to get those emails all the time about those. Yeah.
and so, and there's a line of all that. And so I just try to, when I talk to our parents, I map out the year and I try to say, kind of our time, your time, our time, your time. And I think that helps them understand kind of where and when. And that way they do have 3-4 months to go and play. And I want you to play.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that idea. I mean, I was kind of looking at all the kids at Midway. There's only a couple that play select ball. And so with that idea, where at Faith, it was probably 3/4 of them did,
Sure.
and if they didn't, it was that, well, that kind of had said something more about them as a player than just not a desire to. And so
For sure.
my thought was maybe like down here, how do I make our team feel more of like this is where not only are we going to develop you every day with skill work, but even year round, you're going to play more together. But there's a part of me that like I don't know if I want that. I like the idea of Midway basketball season ends in March and it doesn't start again until November or October. In between that time, we're going to do weights and skill work and shooting, no doubt, but go play with people, learn another style. We love to run and gun, but there is other ways that you could play and hear another voice. But if they're not doing that, then I felt like almost, do I need to do it? And so that's where I love your idea of gathering information. And I wrote down too, it's another opportunity to celebrate, another opportunity to celebrate kids trying things when that they maybe thought we didn't see them do the year before, but they've been working on their own in that area. And I always love those moments. But then there's a deal too of expectations. How do you manage the expectations of why are these guys on this team? Why am I on this team and that? Because you kind of almost put kids almost in a box, or you're letting them know ahead of time what you see in them or where they might be 6 months from now. Well, how does that come up?
So that was I'll speak to when I was at China Spring, we had 11 hot hoops teams or summer league teams. Cause there's a junior high, we'd have 2 7th, 2 8th, 2 9th. And those Junes were wild. I mean, that got to be kind of crazy, but it was always, I think that's the importance of when you end the season, you got to have an end of the season evaluation with every kid, and where you say, okay, in March, I think you're going to be on this team. These are the things I need to see you do. And then in May, you can say, you've gotten better, but you still aren't doing these things better. You need to play with this team. And that's been, I've been blessed that I've only had a few that have been really on the edge. And, I've done things where sometimes they play 2 with this group and 2 with this. And, it's summer. If somebody's gone, maybe they play up or down. But I've always told them the number one thing you do in the summer is play. And we're never going to put you in a situation where I don't feel confident you're going to get minutes in the summer. But Coach McDade had a great quote when we talked a lot about this. He brought up, he goes, the problem is when they pay for something, they think they bought something. So you gotta, and that's such a hard thing because I get it. If I go to Walmart and I pay something, they go, oh, not today. I'm going to be pretty upset. I said, well, hold on. I paid for this. And so that's such a, I think that's where just being clear, what we can guarantee. And I'm not going to say it's been perfect in 11 years of doing this. I've had a few times, but I think it's helped for the majority of saying in March, this is what we think, this is where we see you. In May, and then in November, or October, kind of talking in those 3 time frames of where, and I think that's helped.
I love the idea of especially the transparency that I feel like you got to have. That just helps you sidestep so many landmines. that are out there, just by having those meetings, telling them the truth, but then also giving them things to do. And so like the JAMODI skill rating for me is this test that I put together years ago. We do it 4 or 5 times a year. And that test has helped me so much in those meetings because it basically gives me in, kind of a circle, 3 parts of their game, which part is the best, which part are they lacking? And so I have clarity in what I'm thinking about in that meeting. Cause I think the hardest thing, like we talked about that with playing fast, the more that we use vague language or there's no clarity with what we're talking about, the harder it's going to be for them to understand. And I think that's exactly the same way with our meetings with them. We need to tell them exactly what they need to improve on, not just, hey, I need you to get better. I need your shot to get a little bit better. No, what does that mean? It means when you play this game, you need to be at this amount. Your score needs to be here. How do you get there? Time and time again. And I'm not just talking about you demonstrating it one time. We do it 10 times, and this is an average for you. And so giving them that clarity. I agree with you. I think that's the only way that it's never going to be perfect, like you said, but that you can have all of those teams playing outside of their season and not just have a bunch of butthurt people running around about, oh, I can't believe I'm on JV right now. Well, it's June. This isn't our team, but that's kind of the thing. I've been able to sidestep that for years. And now I'm thinking, golly, okay, do we start a spring league at Midway? Should I have one? Because I don't even know what's down here. I know Hot Hoops is in the summer. Don't want to step on any toes. And the guys love it. Like, I just don't know.
Yeah, it's, trust me, there's been many nights I've driven home from the gym in Waco just fuming, but I think back over my years, and one of my favorite things about in the summer is the amount of I call them kind of free reps, where these games, we talk about it a lot. I said, guys, they're going to flip it off and it never matters ever again. And, they turned it off and they turned it on, and no one will ever discuss it after these 5 minutes right here, what that score was. And I remember we had a guard at China, and we knew he was going to have to be a good player for us. We knew it, and he was going into his junior year, and he just struggling to take care of the ball. And then we were playing Midway, and he just kind of figured out a way to grind the ball up the floor. And it wasn't pretty. It wasn't great, but you could tell he kind of something clicked. If I go at this pace, if I use this part of and he was being guarded and he got the ball at the floor, probably 7, 8 possessions. I said, he's going to be okay. And, and I think back at those moments, and he ended up as a senior. He was first team Super Centex, and we went to the area round, and he was a great player for us. But, before that moment, he wasn't. And so when I think back to some of those times, I feel like there's value in it if you look at it in the correct mannerism,
Gotta have the right lens on. But Coach, that's hard. Yeah. I find myself being frustrated in those more than not. And even this summer, and I was like, they don't even know my name right yet. And we haven't even done anything. We haven't had a practice. And this is like, but I don't know. Maybe at some point I'll be mature as a coach. I'll figure it out. I'm 19 years in, maybe one day. But I think another valuable thing is asking the players. I think the more that we can ask them really about things that, like, I don't care whether we play or not in the summer, in the winter. A TABC is different, but I don't really care. I mean, I'd rather we can just play pickup. We can get in the gym. Let's do skill work. But if they really like it, if it's something they're looking forward to, then why would I keep them from doing that, right? And so I think maybe it's just another opportunity for me to get to ask them, what do you guys want?
Yeah. And, it's kind of one of those things in our area. I laugh because when I first got told about Hot Hoops from the previous coach at China Spring, he thought that the name Hot meant for how warm the gyms were, because nobody ever turns on the AC in the summer.
I walked in there. I was like, I get it.
I didn't, he said he didn't realize it was Heart of Texas hoops till about 3-4 weeks in. He thought it was just, sweat hoops. But I think it's become such a big part of our Central Texas culture, basketball wise, Waco down.
Yeah.
And even in
they all got excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a huge deal. And I think what it gives me a lot of pride in that it's kind of our way without maybe having some of those Gassos at our fingertips that we can
True.
combat with the
Yeah.
Houstons and the San Antonios and Dallases, that we're still gonna obviously, just because of the size and the quantity of teams, we're not gonna have the same depth as those cities. But I think the quality of basketball, I took so much pride when I was at China, and I still take a lot of pride here at Belton in these district games, how well these games are coached. How, I don't love it, but how quickly my stuff is picked up
I
on.
wish they were worse, but
And I'm sure it's the same way, but I always it always gives me a lot of pride in the quality of coaching, and I think some of that stems from that we invest in a larger maybe amount of time than we probably should.
yeah,
Maybe we should do, but we also kind of are adapting to our resources, adapting to,
yeah,
like you said, we may only have 15 to 20% of our program that play select. So those other 80%, we got to get them in live action games, and obviously at Belton, I'm very blessed. We're probably more in the 50, 60, 70 percentile of program of how many kids play select, but it gives those other guys still. And it's not like those other guys. Hoopers are hoopers. They love to get in. They're,
yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
you know,
And I want to
so
keep growing that because I think we're building that identity. And again, Coach McDade did an awesome job. He is an amazing person. When we got to do a hoops talk like this, I just thought the one-liners that he has and the way he speaks, he's just incredible. And the fact that he could coach at so many different places, be at Duncanville and at Southlake, how one person can coach at both of those schools, that's incredible. And so when I realized that this job was open and that he was the one that was there, it definitely made me even more interested in it. But yeah, I think building that idea of guys that love to be in the gym to train, but then man, if we can feed any way that they look forward to basketball just another day, they can just I can't wait. We have a game tomorrow. If that gets them excited, man, then I'm all in it. And I'll take, like you said, a couple of those emails of why is he on JV? Well, it's June,
yeah,
because we don't want to have more than 10 guys on a team so that everybody plays, because like you said, like we're not going to sit in the summer. We're not going to do that. That's going to happen in the season because it's whoever helps us
that's what
win.
happened. Yeah.
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 But no, I
Yeah.
love that.
And, kind of, we talked a little bit our pillars of play, but we talk about our culture and some of those things. We try to keep it simple. We say, love the game, love the work, love each other. And I used to have, it's kind of funny because when I was the coach at Cedar Creek, I stole this straight from Shaka Smart when he was at Texas. And it was all these attributes: accountability, relentlessness, toughness, and it had a description. And it was on our parent meeting, it was in our locker room. And I would say, what are our core values? And they would go, I have no idea. And so
No
I'd like
doubt.
define competitiveness. And it was really funny. I heard him when he was talking about his culture at Marquette. And he says, our culture is how we act, interact, and respond. And I said, even he kind of cut down some of his wordage and verbiage, and, he kind of trimmed that. And so now we just try to say, tying to hot hoops, we love the game, we love the work, we love each other. And it doesn't mean that's all they do. I've had lots of kids play multiple sports, but I've never been successful with kids that didn't love basketball. You might have enough talent to win a few here and there, but the most fun and the most excited and the biggest games I've been a part of that we've been fortunate, it's been always kids that loved basketball. And so that's always going to be kind of our first pillars. And I can meet you in a lot of places, if you struggle in the classroom or if you struggle with, things, but if you don't love this, it's so hard to meet you, it just is. And
There's going to be conflict. There's going to be conflict. And I had an AD tell me one time just to remind me, he said, Matt, we're the weird ones. And I said, you're right. Like we're the ones that care just way more, but I want them to care an appropriate amount. The amount that a 16, 17-year-old should care about a game.
for sure.
It's not their job. It's my job. So they don't need to care like I care. But you're right. If they don't care at all or don't love it at all, there's just going to be friction. It's the same way at Faith. It was a Christian school. And you knew that there were some kids that were just in a different level in what they believed. And it was good that they were there and they're getting great seeds planted. But Like, I used to think about, man, what's the friction in their mind and their heart every day hearing about Christ and hearing about this and not wanting that and not believing in that? That just, it must be hard to show up every day. I think that there's a little bit of that. If we are passionate about basketball and what we're selling and teaching our players, then those that don't, they should feel that friction of like, golly, I'm nowhere's near the love and passion I have for this. And then either they make a decision, they have to get there. Hopefully, something with the way that we train and play, the camaraderie, the culture helps them get there, or they make a great decision of this isn't for me. And that's
Yeah,
okay.
no doubt. I think one of my favorite experiences I had as a coach is when you see kids, maybe a kid moves in or a kid that, we had a kid that moved in at China Spring and we talked about we're all here because we're united by our love of basketball. And I would tell them, I said, would you guys ever be friends if y'all didn't both love basketball? And and I'd say, you guys don't have anything else in common. I said, look what he's wearing, look what you're wearing, look at,
Yeah.
who you sit, and you see kids become best friends through this because of this united love of this game. And it's a silly game, and we all spend way too much time on it, but we love it, and we have this passion
Spend a
for it.
Thursday night for an hour and 17 minutes talking about it. Yeah.
And but you see them connect with each other over it, and that's one of my favorite things. And I'll poke fun at them, and I'll say, "What else y'all have in common?" And they'll just kind of sit there and not say anything, and that's what's so cool about it. And that's what we talk about. This leads you to love each other, and then you care about him because you see how much he cares about this thing that you love, and then you play at a different level for him. And I think
Then
that's
you
probably the
find
most.
and then maybe you
Yeah,
find some things that you do have in common because you had the
yeah.
time to explore it and the care to explore it. Yeah, you're right on the money.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that's so cool about our game is, we talked about loving it, but if we don't really truly care about each other, you can't be great at this game. I played high school football. I love football, but I don't remember what our free safety's name was. Uh, there's so many of us and that's okay. I mean, he was a great player, I'm sure. I went to a big high school, but I don't know what his name was, but I guarantee you can say all your teammates' names that you played basketball with. And it's not a knock on anything. It's just what makes our game kind of unique.
Before I get you out of here, man, the speed round. These are going to be quick questions. First thing that pops in your head. I've been able to meet you, and now we're building this friendship. But after the speed round, I'll really know who you are. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Butter pecan.
Wow, don't hear that a lot. That's good. Greatest shooter of
Underrated.
all time. Underrated.
And,
Greatest shooter of all time.
well, I'll say the common answer, Steph Curry.
Yeah. Who's your favorite?
Favorite shooter. This is a guy I grew up with, Dan Marley. That was my guy when I was a kid.
Thunder Dan, man.
Thunder Dan.
He had those thick shoulder veins. And I remember thinking, like, working out in high school, like, how do I get those? Like, where are they coming in? Sorry, you're not Thunder
Yeah.
Dan. You don't get
Nope.
those. Tracy McGrady had them. Like, those are rare.
Yep.
The inch wide
Yeah.
shoulder
Oh,
veins.
yeah. No doubt.
And he
Thunder
was
Dan
so
was my guy.
tan, and he would do the one-handed dunk. Like, oh, love Thunder Dan.
Yeah.
Do you stand up or sit down more in games?
Stand the whole game. I can't do it. I apologize. Before COVID, I was a shirt and tie and jacket guy. And my wife said her and a lot of the moms would place bets on how fast the jacket would come off. And it was sometimes it was about the 7:45 mark. It was on the chair. So
There's a
I'm
great
up and
video.
down.
My high school coach, Tommy Thomas at the Colony, just legend. And he would start with a jacket, a vest, a tie, and it would be like by quarters. Yeah. And then tie. By the end, it's just a shirt drenched in sweat. Top 3 dinner guests of all time, or top 3 dinner guests, any time period, doesn't have to be in sports.
All right. That's a good question. So I think he don't want to throw around the underrated term, but I'll go biblical first. I think eating with Moses would be really cool. Just to,
Wow. Yeah.
he just when you read Exodus and you read him and all that, then I'll go more, I was a history major in college. And so I think I'd like to eat with George Patton.
Mm.
I don't know what him and Moses would have in common. And then one of my all-time favorite basketball player was Kevin Johnson. So I got to invite him,
Man, that's the
the
Suns
lefty.
connection right there. A couple Suns.
And
Yeah.
I was the Suns. My family was from Arizona, and I was 5 in that. I just turned 6 in that finals between the Bulls and the Suns. That's the first NBA series.
I was going to say that Suns team was really fun. Really fun.
Man,
and if
they
they
were
just
good.
didn't hit the greatest of all time.
But that's the first time I remember crying about sports. I remember watching Jordan hit that shot, and I melted down. But I also remember my mom didn't let me always watch Barkley's press conferences. I was allowed
At
to
least
watch
he
the
was
games,
honest.
but
He said, I'm not a role model.
yeah, no.
Self-awareness is a superpower, and that dude has it.
I had a Johnson and a Marley jersey. I didn't have a Barkley jersey.
She wouldn't buy that one. Best basketball movie of all time.
Man, that's a good one. I know you said Speed Round. I'll go
Okay.
Hoosiers. I just got to go to the gym last year. So
Nice. So did you go to that clinic?
No, my in-laws live in Indianapolis. And so
Awesome.
we were up there, and I said, look, it's time, it's an hour and a half. And so
That's
it's
cool.
neat. It's really cool.
There's a clinic that they have up there every fall, and I've wanted to go for years. United Basketball Plus, I think, puts it on, and they have great speakers, and it's in that gym. I thought, how cool would that be just to sit in that gym and listen to basketball coaches? And every year I have those dates, and it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, no doubt.
For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
I think shot clock is
I
probably
think
the
at
right
Belton,
answer.
shot clock. At China Springs, no shot clock.
Definitely not in China. I was hoping you already got it drawn up.
Yeah.
I think it's probably, I heard Mike Neighbors talk at TABC a few years ago. I laugh. He goes, if we figured it out in Arkansas, I think you guys should be able to figure it out in Texas. But I do think there's some there's some caveats. There's some things we'd have to work through. And obviously, we're at a time that we'd have to talk about some of those things. I think the charge circle needs to come faster.
Oh, yeah.
That one's
Love
a
that.
whole lot cheaper.
Yeah.
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 I think there's not a money or a run or a official, or I think we can
you
get
some
that one.
painter's tape and just put it
Yeah.
down. You just got to have something
call it-
there. Yeah.
Like, I think we can
Yeah.
get that one. I think, and I love charges. We want to take 100 charges a year. At the same time, we got to make sure we're protecting kids on the way down.
But yeah. Yeah.
So, and we can put it an inch behind the college line if we want, but there's no reason not to have that. But shot clock, it needs to start, and it probably needs to work at the top down. I don't think we need to put it in I think there's obviously things. I don't want to see a shot clock in a 8th grade girls 2A game. I don't think that's the right spot for it.
Good call.
I think we need to use some common sense, but I do think we need to start trickling it down.
Yeah. Do players sit the rest of the half with 2 fouls? Rest of the first half?
Great question. What's the score?
Yeah. Sometimes, there's context is important with it for sure.
Yeah. No, I think it's always context, I don't have a hard and fast rule on that. If we're up 8 and we're holding that, we're going to have him sit. If we're down 8, and also how did he get his fouls and what kind of kid is he? Is he, was it an effort foul, and he's usually out of foul trouble, so I think he can buy it. What kind of perimeter defender was he? Was he always at the point of attack, or can I kind of hide him on a shooter for a couple minutes? But I think the more important thing is playing really good situational, detailed basketball in that last part of the second quarter, taking that kid out on defense, putting him in on offense, and making sure you play good O for D in the last 4 minutes, so you're not putting your kid and your team in a bad position. And then, when you put him in, make sure he knows, hey, in ball screens, you're just going under. You don't have to hard switch or anything like that. Just go under and meet it. And, and make sure everybody else knows that that's the coverage with him for the rest. So, I mean, I don't know. I rambled. Sorry, but no, I don't have a hard and fast.
That's good. Favorite holiday?
Underrated, July 4th.
Man, that's the coach's holiday, I think.
And the reason
You'd be
why,
surprised how many coaches say it.
tell my wife, I tell my kids, it's the only day out of the year I'm guaranteed I'm not working. I'm
That's
going
right.
to the parade, I'm grilling and sitting in the pool and looking at fireworks. And
Love Thanksgiving, love Christmas, the family time, obviously what Christmas means. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't watching a ton of film during that time or I wasn't thinking about what's next.
yeah, it's so true. I mean, and I can't tell you how many years, my kids are little and, Santa comes and we play and they pass out. My wife takes a nap. It's noon and everybody's taking a 2-hour nap. The NBA on Christmas Day and who we
Oh,
playing at
yeah.
Christmas is popping
That's
up,
right. That's right.
So, I mean,
Favorite place to travel?
I'll say this because my wife, our family and I, we just went there. I'll say my favorite place is Croatia.
Oh,
We
wow.
just went to Europe about a month and a half ago, and it was that went to the top of the list. It's underrated. Italy was all right. There's really good parts, some parts I'm good with, but Croatia was beautiful. Beautiful people, food, everything. So that's where I'd say Croatia.
What book would you give someone?
I think the number one book I feel like is Chop Wood, Carry Water. It's fast. It's an easy one, but it's so important. Just falling in love with yourself in the process. And, it's hard. I've made we've all made a lot of mistakes, but not holding on to those and not worrying about what's going to be next and just fall in love with today. Fall in love with winning today. And I'm going to steal this from your podcast, but one of the coaches I look up to a ton, especially competing against, was Coach Snell. And he said on your podcast, there's no such thing as bad days. Might have a hard day, but there's no such thing as bad days. And I straight up stole it. Sorry, Coach Snell, you're listening. I'm just a thief, but
He's awesome. He's awesome.
and
Last one. In basketball as a player, who's the GOAT?
it's Jordan. It just is. Watching Jordan play, it's so fun to watch. And LeBron deserves a lot of credit, not blame his longevity, his ability to pass, his ability to, when he was at his peak, play defense. I don't blame anybody for not being good at defense at 41. If I get out and play pickup, I'm not 41 yet, but I don't guard. I foul and try to get on offense. So, I think Jordan, though.
Coach, this has been so enjoyable. And all of those guys that, kind of have mentioned your name, my assistant coaches think very highly of you. And everybody's told me that this would be a really good talk. I'm just so thankful that, this is one of those rare talks where we go for an hour and 30 minutes and I didn't ask any of the questions that we had discussed or talked about, but that's a sign of just a great talk. It helps the fact that you and I are very aligned with not just style of play, but even the way that we think about standards and culture. I'm just so right on board with everything that you said, and thankful to be back in the public school coaches fraternity, to be around guys like you again, because as much as I love all the guys I met at the private school level, it's just different. There's just something different about this fraternity, and thankful to be back in, but also just honored to have this time with you.
Well, Coach, it was kind of a neat deal because, big fan of the podcast, but all these coaches that I've either talked to or Coach Blackburn and Coach Snell, and I'd listen and, just because I really admire them or I meet with them. And then when you invited me on, it's kind of like, when you were a kid and you went to like NBA City and you put on, the NBA player's jersey or put your hand on the ball. I kind of feel like I'm hanging out with all the people that I look up to. So trust me, Coach, I got to live out, a big deal for me today. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Man, well, best of luck this year. Just know that you got definitely a fan right here in what you do. And just again, thanks, man.
Absolutely. No, thanks, Coach. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.